Welcome to the Podfather Podcast. You can find all my episodes on podfather.me. You'll find my 6 podcasts, scan the QR code, or go to roycollin.com. If you're looking for virtual assistants, go to va.world. It's going to be an interesting one because basically, Polish podcaster, outdoorsman, and speaker, but we're kind of in the opposite direction. As I was heading to Poland, into a beautiful city of Łódź, he left Łódź and went close to my city in Kerry, which I'm from Cork, so it's the next city. Please welcome Tommy Serafinski.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Roy.
So, I suppose before we go into our beautiful podcasting information and everything, why Ireland?
A total coincidence. I was bored with my job, and I started looking for a job somewhere else. I didn't even specifically was looking for a job outside of Poland. It could equally be a job in Warsaw or something like that. And at the time, my strategy for looking for a job was not have a CV catered for the position. No. I had like one CV and I sent it everywhere. And that was around the time where like a job market was open to Polish as well. And so one day I got call from the company that was called like a Celtic Tiger Recruitment, something like that, Celtic, whatever. And they say they have offer of a job that would work for me. And I was like, sure. And I went through all the motions, all the interview. And one day they called me and said, like, would you like to accept a position in Tralee, County Kerry? And I go like, whoa, give me 24 hours. I came back home, spin a Wikipedia, Ireland, just like check it out. Where is Ireland and what side of the road they driving? And I saw Kerry, and I saw mountains, and I see sea all in one place, and I go like, I'm there. Even if the job is crap, I'm just gonna see how it works. So total coincidence, and I came here in 2007 and never looked back.
No, excellent. So I suppose kind of the reason that you would have liked that, and it's kind of because I know you've had 2 podcasts, but one conservation and science, and have you ever considered? So, have you always been outdoorsy? So you might just tell me the shows that the podcast that they are and what they really entail, what they're covering.
Yeah, so I quickly start with the have you ever considered, because it was like a collab with my friend William. He's running his own show called with his co-host called People's Countryside Environmental Debate, which is a very long name and it's not a debate at all. And we met on one of these podcasters online meetups in Podcast Mike's Club, I think it's called. And we said, hey, let's do something together. And William had the idea of doing podcast outside of his show that he's doing with his co-host. And we said, hey, so why don't we do this like a not episode, the season of the Have You Ever Considered? And really, Have You Ever Considered is a podcast when we're taking like a big topics. Like, have you ever considered flying less, or have you ever considered eating less meat, and have you ever considered, criticizing less, and so on and so forth. And we start with the perspective of advocate and a critic. So we assume like pod names. And like, for example, episode about flying, I was like a Tommy frequent flyer, and William was like William walks a lot or something like that. And we talking about this issue from the perspective advocate and a critic, exaggerating our points of view. And then so these are like there's like 3 segments of each episode. So this is a critic advocate segment, and then the third one is just a discussion when we try to find a common ground, like a sort of like a taking off our masks, taking off our exaggerated arguments, and start saying like, okay, how we could make it work, in the real life. So that was the idea of Have You Ever Considered? Very fun series. We recorded that in 3 days. Believe it or not, I went to Oxford and we met, and we record 10 episodes in 3 days.
That takes
that
a
was
lot out of you, actually. I was just wondering energy levels and everything because you want to kind of keep the energy levels up. But I know for myself, sometimes I'll do three. There was times I've done 5 shows in a day. It takes a lot out of you. You're zonked after it. So how did you maintain your energy levels?
uh, I don't know. It wasn't an issue. It like we were having fun. We were, like on one hand we were prepared.
We had the vodka as well to keep you.
No. I like William. I don't think like William don't drink that much. I almost completely don't drink. Not that I'm like a religious about it, but it just does not good to me. I'm just getting lazy after a beer, so I may have a beer on the holidays and stuff like that. So, anyways, no vodka, no alcohol involved. We were just having fun. We were prepared to, act out our roles, and we were just having fun. And like if you think about it, 3 days, 10 episodes, it's not that bad because it's like 3-4 episodes a day. So it was okay. And they're not like 2 hours episodes as well. They're around 20 minutes, so it was okay.
And the other one, the one that you're kind of doing now. So, and was it
Continue.
2016 you started at, I believe, yeah? Which is
Correct.
early because, I mean, I was 2018 when I started my first one. But one thing that I saw, well,
I even had a podcast before that one as well.
really? Okay. But the one thing that I saw, it was October 31st, which is Halloween, which maybe you're kind of not in a typical place, but usually in Ireland on a Halloween, there's everybody banging on your door. I know you released it on that date, mate. Probably wasn't recording. Was that just coincidence or what was the
Coincidence, purely coincidence, purely coincidence. I think that the first post on my website is on the Paddy's Day, the 17th. Also coincidence.
So you're the show that you're doing there, then I think you've over 16 episodes. So you've a lot of episodes and you're on top of the charts as well. So you might, because you're talking about wolves and different things and shark fishing and a lot of kind of interesting stuff. So that was kind of my point, really, is like that's why you were really attracted to go there. So you obviously that was something outdoors was probably in your blood anyway, yeah.
Yeah, it's a funny story because I always consider myself a city boy. Like I was born and raised in Łódź, where you are right now, so not really outdoorsy location at all, at all. And I was drawn to the like being out because we had like a summer house near Ozorków. You might know where it is. And we were going there in the summers and we spending summers here like in the rural area, and I was enjoying that a lot. But yeah, mostly I was a city boy, and without a doubt, coming to Ireland, it opened up all those opportunities to being outdoors and so on. So, but the story with the podcast is a little bit different. It's not like one-to-one related to it. And like as you know, the podcast is called Conservation and Science, so it is more taking the angle of conservation and scientific discussion about the conservation in nature and so on, rather than like a purely recreational aspect of it, which is where it started. I gotta admit that.
And just curious because I just saw, I'm not sure, do you do recordings outside? But I saw ones with you with the mic and stuff like that. Because I know I had a guest one time and she used to do outdoor stuff. I think she was from Wales. But like for those that are considering podcasting or maybe have an episode outside, because especially in Ireland, there's a lot of wind and everything. Is there a mic you'd recommend or techniques to stop it? Because sometimes you'll hear people and they're outside and you just are,
Yeah,
you can't enjoy it.
well, like I recorded I think a few videos because I was experimenting with YouTube videos as well. So that was probably one of those rather than actual podcast episodes. With the wind, dead cat is your thing, is your friend. And what I also noticed is that probably even if you have a mic with a dead cat on you, it's actually better if the wind blows straight into you than to the side, because sort of like your body shelters that a little bit. But obviously, like the storms you have in Ireland, sometimes no amount of dead cutting will help you. But yeah, I guess that cut is the main thing. And then, like with everything in life, you have this layered approach. So your recording device should have some sort of noise reduction, noise canceling built in. Some of like cheaper devices has absolutely terrible noise canceling that ruins your audio and doesn't cancel anything. The better ones have a quite good noise canceling. So if you have that cut and then you have a device with noise canceling, and then maybe you do a little bit of post processing, then you should be able to pull off pretty good audio from the outdoors. Here's another thing: when you're recording stuff outdoors, and then you do all the processing and all that stuff, and that audio sounds almost like a studio quality. Why were you recording outdoors in the first place, right? So you need to also take into account, like, maybe a little bit of a wind noise is actually not a bad thing, and this is what I'm looking for, because there's a lot of these podcasts that are recorded outside, and it's a whole genre of a podcast, which is more like this audio show. When you hear other noises, when you hear people putting their feet on the gravel, and you hear birds and stuff and so on. So maybe, just maybe, a little bit of a noise, wind noise is not that bad, because then, especially if you do in a video and you have like all these things outdoors, but your sound is like a bang on or studio quality, like it's like creates this friction between what you see and what you hearing. So it's all like it correct answer to any question. It depends.
Yeah, no, very good. And I'm just curious, like, because when I started, I was trying to get reviews and stuff like that, and they give me a review of my podcast, and they were like, "What's a podcast?" So you were a few years before me. How did you have similar, or how did you get people to start?
You know what? That was probably the biggest mistake I made in podcasting. That for the first 5 years, I couldn't care less. I didn't even like. I was just pushing podcasts, and I had the listeners, and people were listening. And I was happy with that. And about 5 years time, when the whole thing took off, and it's like, oh, there is a business and there's ads and whatever, right? And I, to my surprise, found out that there are other podcasters in the world as well. So that was probably my biggest mistake, that I should hang out with other podcasters from the get-go and kind of being immersed in this. While the first episode, like, I was just producing episode, not even producing, just leveling, just doing all the normalization and stuff, publishing all the I was hosting on SoundCloud back then. Anyone remember SoundCloud?
There's still people hosting on SoundCloud.
I know. They weren't bad. They weren't that bad, like, in fairness. And yeah, and that was just, so in the early days, I couldn't care less about reviews and stuff like that. I had it submitted to Spotify. It was later on, but then Apple Podcasts and so on. So I did the whole thing. I did it proper. And just, I never spoke to any other podcaster.
And who are you hosted with now?
Captivate.
Oh, Captivate. So
I was changing hosts like crazy. I went from SoundCloud. I went from SoundCloud to Podbean, then from Podbean to Acast paid plan. Then I downgraded from paid plan to free plan from Acast, and then moved to Captivate. So I was moving.
I'd like to hear that journey, no, because I know with Acast, because Blind Boy, I don't know, you're familiar with Blind. He's a very popular podcaster in Ireland. He's based, wears a bag on his head, but he's with Acast. But what I remember a few years ago, their app actually disappeared, wasn't it? That they stopped.
Yeah.
They're strange. Like,
they stopped it. I guess it's a normal business thing. They looked at it and say, like, hey, this doesn't, fits in our business model. Let's get rid of it and save on time, money, resources, whatever. So I understand the decision from the business perspective. Yeah, I don't like Acast because of I don't know how it is right now, but the worst thing about the Acast that I absolutely hated was that their bitrate was 64K. Right? And now, like, people who are listening to this, they're interested in podcasting. This is something that people often don't know. when they say their bitrate is 128, it's 128 stereo track. And that means that you have 2 tracks, 64K each, which means that when you're uploading as mono track, like you should, if you don't have a audio drama, not audio drama, like an audio show, then that track is 64K. And I didn't like it. I said, hey, I have all this gear. I have a nice, quality, and you're then degrading all that to 64K. And that was, I was even talking with the guys who are doing like a music production. And it's like, no, my understanding is that 128K is like, but no, 128K is per entire file. So if you have a stereo, you have a 2-channel 64. If you have a mono tracks, it's 64. That's how it works. I hated that in Acast. That was the thing that I decided to move on. Not that I'm doing like a music or anything. I just didn't sit right with me. Why are you doing this to my tracks?
I'm curious what you didn't like about Podbean, because I have my.
I tell you what. Yeah. I tell you what. Very, very easy. My show, when it started, was called Tommy's Outdoors. Okay, Tommy '(S) Outdoors. There, in the title of the podcast, they don't using C data enclosure. They do just text, and they don't allow apostrophe. So they were replacing apostrophe with like a single quotation mark, which is not apostrophe, and it depended on the font used in the podcasting app, looked weird. And then, so I could do Tommy ampersand, whatever name, colon, like a HTML escapement S. And then in some apps, it was rendering correctly apostrophe, and some didn't. And obviously that was non-runner as well. And so I, fought with them for a number of weeks of like, hey, like this is serious issue. Like apostrophe is the core part of English language. How come you're not supporting this character in your title? And the best I could get was they strongly advised me to change the title of the podcast. And I said like, oh, dude, thank you. So that was Podbean. Other than that, they were great. I would
because I have the Polish one with them, and if there's any issue within an hour or 2 hours, they're back to me. And
true,
their system for distribution is brilliant. I mean, it gets millions of dollars. It's like, and I would put that they're helping it. Like,
I would probably be with Podbean to this day, if not for the fact, especially that now as we said, I changed the name of the podcast. It's called Conservation and Science now, so I wouldn't have this problem with Podbean now. But at the time, it was called Tommy's Outdoors, and they just couldn't hack my podcast title.
Interesting. And so, yeah, because I've Buzzsprout, and there's different people that I'd work with, and I'd get access there, but the one that you're working with, no. So what's the advantages to that? And is it a paid one? And what's the
Captivate?
Captivate, yeah.
Captivate is probably the most expensive one of them all. And I like the killer feature, like great support. The killer feature at the time for me was dynamic audio insertion, which they have absolutely best in business. You can have a library of your sound inserts and whatever, and you have like a very nice, really well thought out UI where you can place your audio inserts in your track, pre-roll or post-roll, mid-roll, and you effectively can define like a containers, and then within the container you can drag and drop up to 3 pieces of audio, and then the reprocessing. So it's a great audio insertion technology. That was what drew me to them. Because I thought that the audio insertion is the best thing ever in podcasting and in monetizing your back catalog and all that, which then turned out not to be true. And now with Spotify, YouTube video and all that is just completely out of the window. So I might reconsider whether I'm gonna stay with them or not after my plan is renewing. I hope Danny Brown doesn't hear that, right? He's a Captivate guy. But anyway, so that was what drew me to Captivate. And right now, what I like about Captivate, which is the second thing, it's a European base. It's a UK company. I know they're being purchased by Global, which is but just I currently I feel like supporting European economy. So
Well, I'm not sure what's going on with the UK because BitChute, I put my videos on BitChute as well, and they're after pulling out of the UK. Like you can still post on it, but you're not able to view because of Ofcom or whatever the regulations, and also the government has asked Apple to get access to the.
I know Apple put that out there. They said
This is not what I'm giving you, but we're removing the decryption.
Yeah.
You're going, yeah, you're basically giving it to them. So is it if someone else is coming in,
But I don't like. I think you look. I think that Captivate is another good thing about Captivate, and this is like for the geeks. That if you look at how they building RSS, I think they're building RSS very well. And this is the thing. Like it's a little bit of geeky stuff because you would imagine that every company has the same RSS. No, not at all. Like for example, we talked about Podbean, right? They render title differently. They don't using C data enclosure for the title. Other companies do. So you can build your RSS. You know that, Roy. You can build, but for the listeners, like the RSS can be built in a different ways, better and whatever. And I think that for the podcast hosting company, RSS is the core what they do. This is primarily what you're paying for, that they do your RSS, and Captivate is just spot on in a way how they build their RSS. So that's another advantage. And great support. Great support as well. Like you said, something is wrong, you message them, and like literally within 5-10 minutes you have someone on who do everything they can to help you. They're expensive. They don't have a free plan. They have like a 7-day trial. So you gotta remember that. But RSS is perfect. It's European, and they have kick-ass audio insertion.
And the monetization then, because you mentioned like the inserts is definitely a handy thing because you can do it. But have you able to? Because I know you're on YouTube as well. Have you been able to monetize the show?
Not through hosting. No, not through hosting. Because like unlike Acast, so Acast, for example, they have this like a library of ads, right? So when you're on a paid plan, you can subscribe your podcast to this thing, and then they will, at least at the time, I don't know how it works right now, but at the time they were doing pre-roll and whatever, whatever ads there. So they sort of made that easy for creators to monetize. But in my case, I have quite a niche audience. So in my case, it was like, do I have this my $50 yet? No. Do you have my $50 yet? Oh jeez. Yeah. So it was like, so no, so Captivate doesn't have a monetization built in that way. But they supporting like support tag and podcast 2.0 and stuff like that, and they have some Mark asked with the main guy, and he like to say, oh, it's like a one-click monetization. And I had like an exchange on Twitter back in the day with him. It's like, no, it's not one click. It's just like actually damn hard to monetize your podcast episodes if you want to do this. But yeah, that's, I suppose, different conversation.
And like with Acast, because like I listen to all Blind Boys episodes, and what's strange is sometimes he obviously asks for donations and stuff like that, which is grand the way he does it. He does it in a unique way. But sometimes they put ads in and he hasn't a clue what they're. But I'm in Poland and sometimes they're in Dutch. Like I don't have a VPN on. It's like, it's like, this is strange. I don't know why they're doing that. But with like the Podbean, I can actually do, and I get a bit of checks. I mean, it all adds up all the different things, but you can then click what you don't want. So I don't have like, like political stuff and, drugs and gambling, because I'm just against that. Like, so, but you can have the other ones, and but sometimes people just leave them off. And the thing is, especially in America, like I tell people, you have to be careful with that, because people, they don't, you're left or you're right, and you hate the opposition. And if they're putting in something that you hate, you take it out. You think your man is that, whether it's Trump or Biden at the time, and you just then unsubscribe because of that, because people were not able to just think, rationally. So you have to be very careful if you're actually using inserts.
Yes, exactly, and that's I guess common issue around the industry. I know that I think it was Meat Eater podcast, right? Like a hunting related podcast when they had like ads of some organization that was for controlling guns and whatever. So obviously with hunters that doesn't go particularly well, especially in the US. And but like I think as well that this is like a sidebar, but it and we can talk about the audience. I think that if someone who listens to my podcast, right, and they're listening for I presume, not the first time, and then they will go and unsubscribe because they didn't like something. I'm talking about the things like it's built in my show that I feel like with every episode I get like a half of my audience upset. And so if you are the type of guy or gal who will unsubscribe because you heard something you don't like, that I don't like you as a listeners in the first place, right? I just like, because and then I would expect that someone, if they're upset with the ad they heard, right? And when I was on Acast, I had those ads enabled. I would expect them to message me and say like, "Hey Tommy, did you know?" Right? Or why do you have this shit? Sorry, you can beep it out. You on your podcast, right? And then I say like, "Oh, I didn't know. I am sorry. Thanks for letting me know." That's a sort of relation with my audience I am trying to build and I cherish. People who are angry and say, "I'm gonna unsubscribe," because it's like, okay, fine.
So the social media, and like I want to touch on your kind of YouTube because you've over 500,000 views on YouTube. But I came across one thing that I hadn't seen before. Blusky? It looked like a kind of a Twitter thing. What
Blusky, yeah.
Blusky.
Oh, the web Blusky. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
that's the next big thing.
Yeah, I heard of Blusky and I said I must check that out. But so it's called Blusky because when I saw it on your
well, the URL is Bsky, but the name is Blusky. And that's like a Twitter, like, it was actually founded back in the days by Jack. What was his name? The Twitter guy, Dorsey. It was also found by Jack Dorsey. He left since, but it's like Twitter 10 years ago. It's great. It's great. And if you're I still maintain my account on Twitter. I am not nearly as active as I was. And political angles. Well, yeah, the guy is an asshole. But the engagement also just is non-existent.
And that's with everyone because I check everyone's profile on Twitter. I've got something like over 4,000. Bare. And sometimes you see people like they've got 20 to very little engagement. And I start paying for it, thinking, okay, this should get, and I'm going to stop doing it. I see
paying only
for 3 months.
Paying only bumps your replies. So it doesn't bump your actual tweet. If you reply under somebody's tweet, that bumps your reply. That's all that pay thing does for engagement, which is prioritizing you engaging with someone, not prioritizing engagement with your content. So it doesn't make sense. And on the other hand, like I'm limiting my social media use as well. I thought that I was hugely over reliant on social media for my podcast, and it's just such a hog of time and mental resources. It's just, and like Carl Newport says, I think that we approaching the end of the massive social media platforms anyway. And I think that all the time that was put, it sucks you up like a black hole. Even if you just try to be like a 10 minutes on it, before your 45 minutes is up. And for what? So all that time is way better spent writing your newsletter or coming on the podcast like yours, doing something creative and progressive rather than mindlessly scrolling, because at the end, you end up mindlessly scrolling anyway, because this is everyone knows it is engineered for that. And there's a great book called Digital Minimalism. It's actually an old book by Carl Newport. And when you read about what is called attention economy, because Facebook and Twitter, like these are all attention economy outlets. If you read about attention economy, what it is and how it works, you're just getting pissed. you're getting pissed. It's like, no, I don't want like so and the book is good because it advocates not to get rid of social media and stop using it, but use it deliberately. And this is more what I'm trying to do now. So I cut off, Facebook was always on the autopilot, just automatic posts from my website. I cut off TikTok. I stopped doing TikToks. I stopped doing reels on Instagram. And my engagement on Twitter now is a little bit like on Facebook. I just post where's new episode, there it is, maybe thread, that's all. Blue Sky is the one that I'm spending a little bit more time because there's a lot of people who I know there as well. But again, it's not like back in the Twitter days when I could spend like hours on end. It's just much more toned down. So yeah,
It's
Blue
more
Sky.
positive, because what I found with Twitter is you're going in and you're just seeing so much negativity and showing people getting decapitated and crashes. And it's like, I don't want to watch anything I'm looking at is comedy. So it's not the algorithms saying, hey, Roy wants to see dark stuff. Like, it's not. It's like they're pushing really negative stuff. So I'm just wondering, is the Blue Sky
So Blue
opposite?
Sky, yeah. So the Blue Sky is very light on the algorithm, and a part of that is that you can. So the idea was, and this is what Jack Dorsey had like an excellent talk, that the future is when people can choose the algorithm, right? And so the platform has this built in, and how it is implemented at the moment, there are so-called feeds. And the feed, so anyone can start a feed and can host a feed. And so most often there's like, okay, here's our feed, and if you are, so some feeds are publicly open, some feeds you need to be added to the contributors list on the feed. And so, for example, there's a conservation feed, and if you're added to the contributors list of the conservation feed, and you add to your post a emoji of the dodo bird, then your post will show up in the ecology, in the conservation feed. So you can find those feed, and the algorithm can be more complex than just, it's a very simple case, like, oh, if there is this icon, then it is in the feed. So it might be more complex, but then you can build those feeds. And for example, you have an ecology and conservation feed, and you have a mammals feed, and you have a birds feed, and you have a fisheries feed, and you have a Edinburgh feed. And then you can go to the feed, and then that this is what I want here for, what I'm here for. As far as the negativity, I think that equally this is what people are doing. So I know very prominent ecologist, Rewilder in Ireland, very good guy. I know him personally. I was at his farm. We hang out. We spoke. Like, great guy. I have him on mute. Why I have him on mute? Because he posted like a great ecology stuff, right? But then he goes like, "Oh, this guy got decapitated, and this bad thing happened, and that bad thing happened." And this goes for NGOs as well, like a Irish Wildlife Trust back in the days on Twitter, right? You're just like, "Oh, the oceans are collapsing. This is down. This is dead. This is whatever." And I goes like, "Dude, this is like Saturday morning. Will you give me a break?" So it's sometimes coming from a person or an organization that you normally follow and you like what they do, but then it's like, oh, I just need a break. So that's what I think, like, also those feeds or like these things is a good thing, but outside of everything else, just go outside, consume less social media, folks.
I think that's an important point that you said, because a lot of people do that. It's like, if you're doing something and you're trying to get an audience around it, stay in that lane. And if you're going to do kind of the other stuff, have a separate one for that, because you're hurting them. And like, it's, for example, even with the awakening, I'm exposing fraud and corruption, but I did the crypto different because I said not everyone's into blockchain. And that's the same kind of thing, because I knew I'd lose people. And I think it's the same with your show. So if you're putting your show out and then you're putting posts and then you're doing a lot of other stuff, like, you just have to be aware people have different belief systems, and then they can just go, nah, this guy's a nut job. And
Yeah, exactly. And like, it's different when you're, if I had a Twitter account called Tommy Serafinski, that's me, right? And I'm posting whatever. If people are into me, then fine. Then I can post stuff that interests me, the stuff that I found upsetting, and a photo of my breakfast or dinner table because I like how it looks like, right? It's fine. But if I'm as a brand, as a Tommy's Outdoors or as a conservation and science and whatever, right? Then people who follow me, they are for conservation and science and my stuff. Why would I post photos of my breakfast?
Yeah. So with the YouTube, you've grown your YouTube fairly decent, as I mentioned, over 500,000 views. What kind of tips could you give to, because that's one, I mean, my Polish one is done very good. My own one, it's like 140,000 or something, and I'm using vidIQ and different things, and I get all the search engine optimization, 100 thumbnail, and then it's just like doesn't seem to work. So what have you learned? Because I know there's a load of people trying to figure out that one.
Yeah, I'm afraid I don't have like a hard and fast rule. I think that in general, when you ask about the podcast and and that goes for YouTube as well, because like I was dabbling with different videos, and people can find on my YouTube channel some other videos, how to find bass fishing marks in the winter and stuff like that. But largely it was just it's just like, okay, my podcast should be on YouTube, and it was there since before YouTube was into podcasting. So I just felt like this is just another place where people can listen to audio, and so I was putting it in there. In general, my philosophy is this: why are you like, and this goes a little bit in discussion on this pod fade where people start doing something a podcast, and it's like, I think that the biggest thing is creator fit. Whether you're really enjoying what you're doing, whether you're really enjoying what you're talking about. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with approaching podcast as a business, or but if you're doing this, if you figure out like, okay, this is the topic that people would like to listen, and I can grow in this niche, in this topic, and it like kind of interests me, but maybe it's not like a something that I'm super stoked about it, but it's interesting enough, and you're approaching this as a business, fine, approach it as a business, have a business plan, have a goals, have all those things, because at some point it will turn into a chore, and you need to be able to push through this. Where I'm coming from, I have my day job that pays my bills, and I'm happy with it. My podcast is a labor of love, and like I said, I'm doing that for, like we said on the top of the show, I was doing that for the first 5 years. I haven't even spoken to another podcaster. I genuinely enjoy what I'm doing. It's fun, and a lot of these advice from gurus, oh, you should be doing this and you should be doing that, and like, at some point you got to ask yourself a question: is it still going to be a show that I enjoy doing? Right? Like, is it like, I know that one of the problems with my show is too wide. I should niche down. Like, but then I would lose part of this. Like, so for example, I give you an example. I know that the episodes that are directed or talking about the issues who are reasonably local, Irish or British, less British, Irish, are doing great. They're great, right? So following the conventional advice, I should go like, okay, I am doing only Irish. It is Irish conservation and science show, right? Niche down, like all perfectly right within the thing. But then, I made a podcast with a guy who studied polar bears for 40 years. It's a top of the world, best in the world scientist in the field of polar bear research. It was such a joy and such an opportunity to speak with him about polar bears and his knowledge and everything. I wouldn't give up that opportunity for niching down and having more downloads. Did that episode well? Yeah, kind of. Was it like, oh my god, it's the best episode ever? No, no, not that many people into polar bears in Ireland and UK, where it's majority of my listeners. But that was an episode that stands out to me right now, and this is great creator fit. So yeah, I limited a little bit topics from the US and Canada, because they're just not, you know not that big of an interest. And so I'm following. I'm reasonable. I'm trying to niche down reasonably. but not at the cost of what makes me want to do this podcast. I suppose going back to your question, Roy, I think everybody needs to find that for themselves. Do they want to turn that into business and monetize and have 1,000 subscribers within X weeks and da 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 da? That's a different approach, and that's a different advice for you. Do you want to enjoy and keep doing what you're doing, even if you're like, for the first number of years, my podcast was like $2,000 a year in a hole that were coming out of my pocket. I couldn't care less because I was enjoying it. And, every listener, every person who messaged me, every guy I was going to the conferences or all those meetups, and as you're like, are you the podcast guy? Oh, I'm listening to your podcast. Like, dude, that was like, I was like smiling for an entire week. I couldn't care that I'm not making money on it, So I suppose my advice would be careful with the advice. Are you like, what are you doing this podcast? Why are you doing this? If you want to turn it into a business and you want to, push through this being a chore and whatever, yes, get a business advice on it. If you're just independent and you want to enjoy this, be careful, because there's a lot of, plenty actually, all those coaches and gurus who will tell you that they will push you through the 1,000 downloads per episode in 7 days. Is it still going to be the show that you enjoy doing?
I think that's a very relevant point, and some people will go down the wrong road. And like what I've noticed is, say with the awakening, that like I'm big into sovereignty, common law, and things like that, and I enjoy that anyway. And they get the highest downloads, and I've got more people on it, but it's not something that I could do continuously, because then it becomes boring. And I love having variety, but I make sure that I cover that, and if there's something new in the field. But I know that some people will kind of listen and go, oh, I must go down this road. And that's why, as you say, Podbean, or just go, yeah, this is no longer making me. You want to jump out of bed, you want to have a conversation, and when you're finished, you're going, I do it for me. I mean, I learned so much. My life has changed based on conversations. And that's the way you want it. And it's like, if you have a set. So there's the newsletter. And I'm curious with that, because a lot of people are building the list and everything, instead of having the list with the podcasters and all that. And is the newsletter more about what you're doing and out there, or do you actually share your episodes as well? And have you found that has benefited your show?
So I have two sections, usually two sections in the newsletter. One is the main. So I am publishing newsletter with episode. So I publishing every 2 weeks on Tuesdays, and every 2 weeks there's an issue of a newsletter. I also have a section there which is feature article. So I start newsletter with a little bit of write up, which is like my stuff. Then there is an episode that I'm sharing, and there's a description of the episode. And then there's usually a feature article, which is like someone may write an article for me, or maybe I was on another podcast. By the way, like I'm here with you, so I'm probably gonna say this again. And, oh, by the way, I was on the Podfather podcast. Here's where you can tune in and listen and so on. So that's the format of an episode of the newsletter. It really started, I have a website on WordPress, and WordPress has this notification, which is like a kind of like a newsletter-ish, but I embedding like a Spotify player in the post, and then when this goes as a notification, you have just a link. It's just a mess, and you cannot format this, like, and so I'm not, I'm just clicking always like not send notification through WordPress. I'm just sending my newsletter because I have, this additional benefit of all those things. And also, like everybody knows, you own your mailing list. You can go to these people, you can send them, you can upsell them, you can, ask them for, support your podcast and so on and so forth. And I think like what is especially interesting and how it benefits the podcast, that with newsletter, you can do those things called lead magnet. So, one of the most successful lead magnets on me was like a guide how to become a hunter in Ireland, where there's like a substantial group of people, especially, aged 35, 40, 50, who want to get into hunting, and they have no idea how. They don't have family or friends. They haven't been taught by their parents, and this is hard, but they want meat, They want to be out in the outdoors. They see the benefits and all that. So I write it up and I say, hey, like you want this, subscribe to my the typical thing. Give me your email address and you subscribing to my newsletter, by the way, and I'm gonna send you this. And then they're on the list, and then they getting exposed to my podcast through this, right? And obviously there are usual caveats. If you have a people subscribe through your How to Become a Hunter lead magnet, and you have an episode about hunting or deer management or whatever, rewilding, they're gonna be interested, right? If you get those people in and then you publish an episode about climate crisis or like a climate protests and whatever, they may unsubscribe. But that's kind of like it goes with the territory of having wide range of topics. But I found it good in that regards, that it is a platform to get people exposure to my podcast, and at the same time that gives an opportunity. I think that having an opportunity at some point, like at some point I might decide to not do the podcast anymore, right? I don't foresee it. I just hit 200, published episode 200. Like you said, I'm doing that for 10. Next year it's going to be 10 years. But at some point I'm still like, what, maybe I'm going to put more effort into writing and doing newsletter. So that's just gives an option. I would definitely recommend to have a newsletter for all the podcasters. If not anything else, you will be less reliant on social media thanks to it. It's you have a way of reaching to your potential audience, to your new audience. You have your email address that people can contact you. Like it's the benefits are vast in my view.
Just finally, one of the things that I haven't been doing that I will be doing based on listening to one of your episodes, it was, now you can leave a comment on Spotify and you can go and I've read comments, but I've never said that. And I think sometimes you just say it and it's good because you can get a lot of feedback and then you can adjust things or just realize, because sometimes there's something that you're not aware of and the comments are actually what help you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think there's another thing that when the platform introduces something new, like comments on Spotify or video on Spotify or like whatever, reels on Instagram back in the day or shorts on YouTube, they will give you some algorithmic love if you do this, because that's you aligning with what they're do. So I think that on many, you don't need to have it like be a coach or podcast guru. Like if you on the platform and that platform introduces something new, you try that. You try that with them, because they will support you and you supporting them, and you will get support as well. So I think like a comments is and again, I got some comments. It's like with my experience, like the comments are on Spotify usually like, oh, it's great thinking. It's this sort of comments. So it's not particularly like getting a discussion, but it's one more avenue. And especially on Spotify, like I started writing some stuff about podcasting on Medium, so people can find me on Medium by my name, Tommy Serafinski, where I'm putting pieces, specifically around the podcasting, about video podcasting and so on. And I like I said in one of those pieces, I think that the Spotify is heading towards like a closed ecosystem, a little bit like YouTube. And like for me, and I think that for many podcasters in Europe, Spotify is the majority player. It's like a majority of their listens comes from Spotify. And you want to be well digged in on the platform, just in case one day they say like, all right, now you're Spotifyer, like YouTuber, like then you already know the thing. This is like a specificity of a platform that you also need to know, like all those things. So I think it's good from various perspectives to check the comments. So yeah, people, just if you're listening to this on Spotify, leave us a comment and tell us what you think.
Oh, super. Listen, totally enjoyed it, Tommy. You might let people know where they can find you.
Oh, they're just like on the very podcast platform that you're listening to this episode right now. Just type conservation and science and you'll find me.
Yeah, perfect. And I love the links in the show notes, both on the audio and the video. So Dziękuję bardzo.
Lovely job. Dziękuję bardzo.
So that's all for the Podfather. You'll find all my episodes on podfather.me. You'll find my 6 podcasts. I won't tell you what they are. You can check them out. Scan the QR code or go to royconn.com. If you're looking for a virtual assistant, go to va.world. We have packages from $99. Show the kids thumbs up, 5-star rating, and check out Tommy's podcast. Give him a 5-star rating, share the love, and it all comes back. And comment, because any of the comments, we read them all. As long as they're not abusive, they stay up. Until next week, take care.